Hi, this is Devin, checking in from the future. I just got done editing this episode, and I have a content warning for you. In this episode, we discuss Greek mythology and some of the reprehensible things that characters in Greek mythology do. We don't go into any graphic detail or anything like that. I really hope that you'll give this episode a listen, but the mental health of our listeners is the most important thing to us, partially because most of our listeners are our family and friends. Thanks so much. Take it away, Miles.
Hey everyone, and welcome to The Root of All Podcasts. I am Miles Newverth.
And I'm Devin Newverth. Welcome.
I'm very excited about this episode today because, one, we're back after a week off. I had some issues at my apartment regarding the plumbing, and it went very well and cool and wasn't at all the most stressful thing I've dealt with in a while. So I'm glad to be back at a space where I can record, which is very nice. And there's another reason this episode's a little special. We did have someone add us on Twitter finally.
Yes, we did. We had a request.
After all of our badgering people to add us on Twitter, someone asked us if we would take a look at a podcast. So one of our podcasts today is going to be that podcast. I'll get more into that when we're actually talking about that podcast, though.
That sounds great. For those of you who are listening for the first time, this is obviously a podcast in which we rate podcasts and just let you know who should listen to them using our unique one-of-a-kind algorithm.
Our honestly historic algorithm. TM on the algorithm.
I know that our dad really likes it. If we discuss the algorithm for about 5 minutes. So we're going to spend about 5 minutes discussing the algorithm real quick and then jump into it, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking it might be fun if we give it a cool robot voice. Just kidding. What's our topic for this week?
This week, we have chosen to do Medusa.
It's fun, really topical, fresh. I actually have
Yeah.
I actually have heard like Medusa specifically mentioned in my life and in media I've consumed recently, so it feels topical, even though it, like, being ancient mythology, it's like the least topical thing you can do.
It's from like 2,000 years ago, but no big deal.
NBD. 2,000 years ago, the year 19.
That is the 18th sequel to Year 1. It's coming out this year.
Yeah, production was pretty slow, but it's all right. I'm excited to hear your half, because you always go first, because that's just the way that we like to have it done, and you usually have like more research that you've done or what have you. I'm curious on your half of the podcast what that's gonna feel like. So what podcast did you listen to this week?
So, this time we had a unique situation this week where I knew exactly what podcast you were going to be listening to. And so I was able to kind of cater to that. And so you have a podcast that is it's a narrative podcast. And so what I have done is intentionally chosen a podcast that sort of gives us a little bit of background to that. So we have I can set the stage and then you can kind of get into it. But it's a little twist even on that. The podcast that I've chosen this week, or 2 weeks, or however often, we'll get it out eventually. The name of the episode is called Mary Beard, From Medusa to Merkel.
Okay.
It is on LRB Readings, which is London Review of Books. The lecture that she gives in this podcast is called Women in Power, and she gave it at the British Museum. It's very cool. She's Mary Beard, Professor Dame Mary Beard, is probably the best known classicist, especially in Europe.
Not to be confused with classist.
No.
She's the best known classist. She just cannot stand the pores.
Yeah, she really hates
Woof.
them.
As one of the pores, I'm offended that we are spreading her word.
So I actually had to look up what a classicist was.
Sure.
Because that's not a term that comes up in my everyday life.
Shocked I am.
I know. So essentially, she is a professor of classics at Cambridge, and classics refers to basically Greek and Roman, like just generally ancient Greece and ancient Rome.
Okay.
Both. She tends to focus from what I read on Wikipedia, which is the best source for information. She tends to focus more on Roman culture than Greek, but Romans, they basically stole all of Greek culture anyways.
Yeah.
If I learned anything from the TV show Disney's Hercules, it's that Roman mythology is just Greek mythology with weird names.
Yeah. They're like, wait, if we take the mythology and then change the god names to planets, it's science. And then it's Roman science instead of Roman mythology. It's a strategy I'm kind of trying to use, but I'm not sure in what context yet, because my mouth got a little quicker than my brain with that one.
Good. So she talks about a wide variety of things. Obviously, she does get to Medusa. About 34 minutes into the podcast, so It does take a little bit of time. There's a little bit of a... it's all great. It's fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. Very accessible, but it takes a while to get to this setup. She goes into... she talks about Greek mythology, which is, super problematic because Greek and Roman in Greek and Roman mythology, everyone is awful.
Yeah.
All the time. Just every second. It's not all Disney's Hercules. It almost none of it is like Disney's Hercules.
I would love to get a list of things that is like the three things in all of Greek mythology that does feel like Disney's Hercules. Because Hercules isn't one of them. That's for certain.
Sorry, I lost my spot there. Let's see. She starts by talking about Herland, which is a novel written in 1915 by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. That's how I pronounced that name, which was wrong. I do want to take this moment to just apologize in advance for mispronouncing every name that I'm about to say, starting right now.
All right.
Because it's Greek mythology, and I'm going to get the names wrong. So I do... just bear with me. I'll do my best. I'll probably change the pronunciation every time I say almost every name. So just bear that in mind. And I'm just apologizing for that right now as a blanket apology. But Herland is about an isolated society composed entirely of women who reproduce via parthenogenesis, which is basically no men are required in their reproduction, and she talks about that. You should really hear her talk about it because she does a much better job than I could. But I thought it was really interesting that book existed in 1915, which is, a long time ago.
Yeah.
You could say like 100 years ago,
maybe,
and you would
maybe
still like longer than that.
You could say 104 years. You could. You don't have to.
You could. I didn't, but you could.
Speaking of time, how long is the podcast that you?
It is, I believe, like 74 minutes. So it's a long one.
Good. That'll get you through
covers
a
lot
and a half.
She covers a lot of ground, though. She spends a little bit of time talking about Elizabeth Warren, how in Elizabeth Warren was silenced. She wasn't allowed to read a letter that was written by Martin Luther King Jr.'s widow that was written 30 years previously. She wasn't allowed to read it on the floor, and her male coworker senators were allowed to read that same letter a couple of hours later. So that's fun. So there's here going into this this like Greek mythology and how awful everyone is in Greek mythology, it was really easy to kind of go like, oh, they're all the worst. That sucks. Good thing everything is so much better now.
Yeah. ...
And then you hear you like I remembered hearing about that, but like to have it brought up again and be like, oh, that was a couple of years ago, and kind of like it just hurts. And getting ready for this episode, there were a lot of times where I just was kind of uncomfortable thinking about like how not far we've come in 1,500 years.
Yeah.
But the way I figure is just trying to avoid things that make me uncomfortable all the time is not how like good things happen. If you just avoid uncomfortable things, then nothing ever happens.
Yes. That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that.
One cool thing that she did was she Googled cartoon professor on the Google, which is where you Google things usually. Generally. I mean, she might have Googled it on Bing. She Googled it. She Googled the term cartoon professor, just to kind of show that, like, just an imaginary professor is generally not a woman. Like, if you just... so she Googled that, and this was in 2016 or 17. I believe 17. And 1 out of 100 was a female professor, and that was Professor Holly from Pokemon. So they were the vanguard of female professors in at that time.
All right.
Just as a fun exercise, I actually Googled cartoon professor in preparation. So this was a couple of days ago now, and I got 4 unique female cartoon professors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Progress.
One was in reference to her lecture. It was literally Professor Holly with like the note underneath it was about how she Googled and came up with one woman.
Right.
But I had 2 clip art images that were different from each other. And then also there was a little cartoon of Professor McGonagall from Harry Potter.
That makes sense. Idea.
Yeah.
Because we've only talked about one animated show so far, and that doesn't seem like enough for our podcast. Idea for a new show. Sequel to The Magic School Bus. Not a reboot. Takes place after. Where Miss Frizzle is Professor Frizzle. And is teaching at college. Somehow does still take her children on field trips.
So the caveat here is it has to be like Saved by the Bell and Boy Meets World style, where somehow she has followed her entire class is still in her class.
Same students.
You gotta have Ralphie and
all the rest here on Gilligan's Isle. They at this point, they have no other concept of what schooling looks like. It's been years since they set foot in a regular class, so they're in this professor's class, and like first day of school is their first class in college, and every episode is broken into 2 parts. Part 1, in the school bus with Frizzle solving problems. The second part, the B plot of every episode, is them having to go to any other class on their curriculum. And just not knowing how to deal with it.
Like, are we going on a field trip?
It's like, so where are we getting in the bus? Do you do buses? Where's your bus? Is it a coach bus? What have I...
About halfway through the first season, they actually do, for some reason, go on a field trip on a regular, non-transforming school bus, and they freak out.
They end up getting into way more
This bus doesn't have any seatbelts, and is not...
They get to like a regular type zoo, and they're like, we gotta break the animals out. like they end up doing horrible things because they assume it's a magical field trip.
Yeah. That sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, and then there'd be one more animated professor.
So speaking of any other professors, I kind of want I wanted to expound on this idea of like what female professors were out there, because I think that's a good, like, it's a true thing that like you think of a professor, you don't really think of a female professor. You think of someone that looks like Einstein, or like the brown jacket with the elbow patches. Yeah. That's, you think of the principal from Recess is what you think of when you think of a professor. So I went to Wikipedia's. They have a page of fictional professors where they break it down into books or literature, films, and TV. In books, in literature, they have 2 professors on all of Wikipedia's fictional professors page that are female, excluding Harry Potter professors.
Okay.
Actually, no, I lied. Only one. The other one I have an asterisk next to, I forgot. Because a series of unfortunate events has Professor Fletcher, who is not gendered in the series.
Huh.
So they're not listed as a gender. The internet thinks that it's a male professor. Imagine that, because they think it's named after an adventurer with the name Fletcher, who is a guy. So they think that it's probably imagined as a male professor, because that's how society thinks of professors. And then there were 10 different Harry Potter professors in all the books, but that includes in the final books, where they have like weird professors that we never even really saw because we were off with Harry and he wasn't at Hogwarts anymore, where like they had like substitute evil teachers in, and it was not a good time. In movies, I didn't list all of them in movies and TV, but in movies there were 6 named female professors on the Wikipedia page, which everyone knows is the best place to find information. 3 of those were from Hogwarts. So 3 which I guess is better non-Hogwarts professors than in literature, because there was only one in their literature section. On TV, there were 10, and none of them are Harry Potter Hogwarts professors, because there's not a TV show.
Are any of them from The Magicians?
I do not know.
Okay, because
I don't think so.
Because I watched The Magicians. I'm a big fan of the show, and there are female staff who work at the school, but after the first season,
are they professors?
That's my thing. I'm not sure.
See, that's the
I
trick.
think I can think of 2 who are referred to specifically as professors. Yeah, I think there are 2, but I could be wrong. So at me on Twitter, Magicians Experts. Honestly, please, I just want someone to talk about this show with. So that's super interesting. I mean, obviously, it's something.
For anything else, you can at us as a podcast. If you have any comments or questions about Magicians, at Miles specifically.
Specifically, so the show The Magicians, I hear plenty about just regular type magicians in my everyday life.
You don't want to talk about like Neil Patrick Harris?
Unless if you have some like coin tricks you want to swap, we can do it. But,
person. So, Medusa, just like all of Greek and Roman mythology, has a lot of different origin stories. But one famous one is from Roman mythology, where she begins as a beautiful woman who is vain, and specifically a blonde woman who has beautiful hair, which is maybe foreshadowing. She is then taken to Athena's temple by Poseidon, god of the sea, and raped in Athena's temple.
Woof. There's a lot of that happening in these mythos, though, huh?
Oh, especially gods.
Yeah.
The gods, and male gods in particular, were just... that's actually only the first instance of deity sexual exploits in this story. There's another one in just a couple of minutes here.
Great. Love that for us.
So, it's fantastic. No, it's the worst. Just to be completely clear.
Yeah.
This is not a joking matter at all.
No.
But, to make things even better, she is then immediately punished for being raped in what I would hope and would I imagine is probably the world's first, if not best, example of victim blaming for a rape. She is punished for being raped by being turned into the Medusa that we all know from
the
stories.
snake-haired Gorgon whom
Snakes
turns you to stone
and turning
with her
people to
gaze.
stone and all that fun, monstrous, horrible stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of where Mary Beard jumps ahead a little bit, and so I actually listened to a couple podcasts and looked up on Wikipedia just so I could kind of get some middle of the story, because she kind of jumps ahead to the end, and that doesn't feel fair.
Yeah, hit me with it.
So pulling up from Wikipedia and other podcasts and just general, we are the next part of the story is Perseus, which we have to kind of back up a little bit. Perseus's grandfather has a daughter and is upset that he didn't have a son. So he goes to the Oracle of Delphi and is told that your daughter, Danaus, which is another name that I'm probably saying wrong.
This is all part of that blanket apology.
Yeah. Is going to have a son, and he is going to kill you. So he freaks out and locks his daughter in a cell so that she cannot have a child. This is where Zeus comes along and appears as a golden shower and impregnates her. So, however you wanna interpret that, is up for interpretation. But either way, that's our number 2 instance of
unwanted god sex.
Yeah. So she is has a son, Perseus, and they are promptly put in a box and shoved out to sea because his grandfather, is afraid of being killed, but doesn't want to kill Perseus because he's the son of Zeus, and he doesn't want to anger Zeus. So instead of killing him, he puts him in a box and shoves him into the ocean.
Great. That's how I solve all of my problems as well. Ocean boxes.
As a species, we kind of tend to do that. That's where all the straws go.
I mean, you're right. I mean, we just want the turtles to have cool nose piercings. I do want to be on the record saying that while we shouldn't litter straws and we don't need wasteful plastic like that, fighting climate change is significantly more about dealing with the effects of capitalism and corporate specifically wrecking the environment. I just want to have that on the record as my opinion. But also, sure, use reusable straws. I just don't use straws, but...
So, anyways, they're in a box. They come ashore in Seraphos?
Yeah.
And are taken in by the brother of Polydectes.
The man of many dects.
Yeah, many decti.
Yes.
As Perseus grows up, Polydectes falls in love with his mother. Not his own mother, he falls in love with Danaus. Danae, Perseus' mother.
Right.
But Perseus says, no, stay away from my mom. And Polydectes says, I'm the king, I'll do what I want, you go kill a Gorgon and bring me her head. And Perseus says, sure, that sounds like a blast.
Sounds reasonable, I guess.
Yeah. So he goes on a big quest and is given a lot of cool tools to do things. He gets a mirrored shield and a helmet of darkness and a adamantium sword. And I know I mispronounced that one, but it definitely is where the term comes from.
Yeah.
So I'm sticking with it.
Yeah.
And Winged Shoes. It's, if you've ever read or seen Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, basically all the items that he gets in that are what Perseus gets in this story.
I really liked Percy Jackson, the film. I thought it was a lot of fun, and we never got another one, and I'm bummed about it.
The books are so hard, though, because they're written for much younger children than the movie was made for.
Right. I get that.
And they're written, like, first person, from, like, the perspective of, like, a 10-year-old or however old he's supposed to be in the books. And so, like, it's good for younger, but I just couldn't read the books.
Sure.
But
if
I
you're
like the
looking
movie.
for something that flavor, have you read the Gate Thief series?
I did.
Okay.
I read all of them.
Yeah, they're excellent. That's a great,
Orson Scott Card, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which.
Yeah. No, he's not my favorite person, but I like some of his books.
Specifically, if you wanted something like Percy Jackson flavored, but written for adults, I think that's
not
a
a
great
child.
bet.
Yeah. But so yeah, that's what happens. Mary Beard then comes back and tells you about how that story ends, and then talks about how that kind of imagery is used today, even still. There are images of Angela Merkel from Germany as the head of Medusa. And there are images of Hillary Clinton as the head of Medusa, with, like, Donald Trump as Perseus. And it's real messed up.
Whoa.
Also, just for an extra bit of, like just an extra dose of awful, from the story in which Perseus kills Medusa, he is then later quoted as saying that her punishment fit the crime, basically. Like, just to double down on the awful of, like, yes, like, the... just to double down on how awful all of it is. He goes... He says that she was rightly punished for her crime of being forced to have sex with the Greek god Poseidon.
Getting raped by Poseidon.
How dare
this
she?
This idea. I saw this thing. I'm gonna quote it wrong, and it was on Facebook, but it was talking about, like, it showed like a male artist can paint a naked woman. Because he likes to paint naked women, have her looking at a mirror and call it vanity, and have it suddenly be about the woman's flaw. Like you made up a fictional woman that you painted, and you painted a mirror in her hand, and you are judging her for vanity. Like, the whole thing is stupid, and it's the whole story of Medusa in a nutshell, but not as extreme as rape and murder.
Sorry, I actually didn't catch that last sentence, brother, because the video cut out.
That's fine. You can hear it when you edit.
Great. Well, in that case, I'll just hold on. Give me a second. I'll just say, I totally agree.
Perfect.
No, I need another second of quiet. I don't know about that, brother. There we go. Now I have both ways of reacting, and I can choose whichever one I want. Yeah.
That's great. That's amazing. Yeah, and that's obviously that's a huge can of worms that society does need to be talking about right now, is just the lambasting of any women in power that the patriarchy has been doing since the beginning of time. And like, I've recently been listening to podcasts talking about the history of witchcraft and how, like, the reason witches were suddenly considered evil as opposed to being, like, the wise healers of a particular village was the church came in and said, these women have power. I would like it for myself. And then having everyone murder the women who were respected in these villages. Dame
Professor Mary Beard talks about how women, when it comes to power and women are, like, it's always like an exterior the women are always seen as like taking power, like reaching into where they shouldn't be and grabbing power, and like it's an exterior. They're not like when you see like when you do think of powerful women, oftentimes you see like a someone who, the way she describes it in her words, is someone who looks a lot like a man with shorter hair and a pantsuit, and that's just because that's how it's been in society.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that specifically organized religion is to blame because they were at fault for the witch trials, but certainly they've had a part in it. Like huge numbers of major groups have had a part in shaping this thing since the dawn of time, when men have been taking power from women. But
historically, men are awful. And
yeah,
that's just true.
Yeah, but it's nice to know that the gods in Greek mythology are awful no matter what gender. They're equal opportunity. Gods are awful, gendered or no.
So why don't you
tell us
podcast? About your podcast, that thing.
Well, welcome to Miles's part of the podcast. This week I listened to a podcast called Alternative Stories and Fake Realities. It's like an audio drama, poetry, and writing podcast. So the episode I listened to is just titled Medusa. It's 40 minutes long, and it has a story of Medusa as well as 2 poems titled Lament for Medusa and Victim of Medusa. Yeah, it's a fascinating story. Like, I really enjoyed... The entire production was great. Like, the poems are nice and well selected to, like, fit in with what's going on. But the story itself has, like, kind of 2 parts. And the first part shows, like, basically the first person of someone who's just part of a group tasked to try and kill Medusa. And basically it's them being like, this person's been tormenting us, we're gonna do it. They go in, they lock eyes, they're slowly turned to stone. Skip a bit later, we are also still in first person with Jenna, who is part of another group who has been sent to kill Medusa. They have a plan of sorts. She has someone in her group with her who's like been kind and like kind of makes friends with her, even though they didn't know each other before. And basically they're running in, they have a plan, and it all goes wrong immediately. And it gets to this point where the best thing that can happen is Jenna's like, I'm going to get Medusa's attention and let everyone else get away. Like, at this point, we are not going to win. The victory condition has changed to less of us die. So that's basically what happens. And Jenna ends up walking in and as opposed to running in, buying everyone 5 seconds in folly while she charges in and gets killed, Jenna starts to talk with Medusa. Yeah, and that ends up being what this whole thing is about, is basically these 2 women talking about the different viewpoints of this situation, of the situations that they've both been put in.
And that is a kind of an ongoing theme of... I looked at a couple of their episodes, and kind of their whole deal is to kind of take things from different perspectives, and that's their jam over it. Alternative stories and
fake realities.
That's the name of the podcast that we are discussing. They requested that we discuss their podcast, which is no takey backsies. Thanks for requesting. And I'm sorry that I can't even say the name of your podcast correctly. But you asked for it.
Yeah. It's neat. And that's the thing that stood out to me, and they kind of mentioned this in the little description, but like the thing that Jenna ends up confronting Medusa with, I'm gonna double check that the name is Jenna and I'm not Crazy Town Banana Pants. I was right. Okay.
Good.
The thing that Jenna ends up confronting Medusa with is basically empathy. They take this moment to talk about it, to the point where like Jenna's like, okay, this bad thing's happened to you, but you are perpetuating it by doing these bad things now. And Medusa's like, I don't come to you to kill you. You come to me, and I kill you. And Jenna's like, if I was in your situation, I would do X. And Medusa's like, you don't know that. You aren't in my situation. You're here. You have come to kill me. And Jenna's like,
which is kind of rude.
Yeah, and at that point, Jenna's like, I have to. If I don't, I will be killed. Like, if I go back, if I turn around now, they will kill me for abandoning this.
I just want to take a second to just say how unfair it is that I have Danae and Polydectus and Perseus to talk about, and you get to discuss the exploits of Jenna. Jenna the Assassin.
Jenna Assassin.
I just want to say how unfair that is. We end up in Greek mythology, and you get to discuss Jenna.
Yep. Some people have it, other people don't, and by it I mean luck. But yeah, I was actually curious, like, this whole idea of like looking at these myths via another scope, or specific like a scope of like looking at it with empathy in mind. Are there any other stories you can think of where that would be a better way to portray them?
I'm not sure I understand the question you just asked.
If you were so obviously there are a few different episodes talking about a few different mythologies in alternative stories and fake realities, but I haven't listened to any of those. So if you were going to like pick a story you wanted like another take on, specifically one that dealt more with like understanding and empathy as opposed to whatever, like say you pick the Odyssey and it's about you and the boys getting home from war or whatever, like what mythology would you like to hear retold, so, like, in this way?
You're wondering what story? Sorry, you're wondering what story I would want from a different perspective other than like the classical hero's perspective.
Yeah.
So earlier today, I was watching a YouTube video about Hook, starring Robin Williams as adult Peter Pan. And I think that I'm probably not. I don't know that you know where I'm going. I think that it would be awesome to have a story from the perspective of Shmi, Hook's second in command.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Shmi.
So just like the idea of he kind of takes care of Captain Hook and makes sure that he's up to the task of being the leader, and like props him up, and then also like goes in the background and actually gets everything done at the same time. And so I just think that would be a really cool perspective. And I just thought of that because I happened to be watching a little YouTube video. I don't remember who it was by, but just about Hook.
That'd be really interesting, especially like because there's a lot of things you can juggle. Like on the one hand, Shmi, the brains behind this operation, really is using Captain Hook kind of as like a figurehead, and balancing this thing where you have your figurehead because he looks great in the red coat. At the same time, he keeps losing fights with a child.
Well, here's the thing, though. I feel like so the thing though is that if like you have to have Peter Pan, like you have to have. I feel like Shmi like props up Hook just enough, but then also like is sabotaging things just enough, because I don't think Shmi, like I think Shmi just likes the fight. Like he doesn't want Hook to win. He just wants to keep being a pirate and like just keep like you need to have. There has to be someone for the pirates to pirate. Yeah. And so even after like in that story, Peter Pan has been gone for a decade. Yeah. And
they just have Rufio.
Like they kept. They just he just I feel like in my version of the story, Shmi like secretly props up Rufio like so that there's a fight to have, because Hook like gets despondent and is like, well, there's no point. I need someone to fight. There's no one that's worthy of James Tiberius Hook. Yeah. And so like I feel like that's my version of Shmi. Like Shmi realizes that Hook needs Peter Pan, and so that's where that's where he like is there to help all that run the way that he wants it to run. He's the mastermind behind all of it and keeps the crocodile clock ticking, so to speak, in my version of the story.
I love that. I think what I would end up wanting to go with, I think Hansel and Gretel could use some work. Looking at that from specifically the angle we've looked at Medusa today, Hansel and Gretel's like, all women are bad, and because like the two villains of that story are the stepmother who's like, husband, get rid of your children, and he's like, all right, and then there's a witch in the woods.
All right,
like, and so like looking at this thing, like, why does this woman want rid of these children so badly? Like, why? Like, how does this story make sense from that perspective, as well as like, this woman is off in the woods. She has a candy house. So presumably the only purpose of this character that you've created is to lure children. But also she's not good at it enough to not get kicked into an oven. So this story has some holes. And I think they could use some plugging.
Presumably she's been doing it for a long time to where like her eyesight is not very good. Like she was good at it to the point where she's been doing it for so long that because if I remember, there's a version of this that we have read to my 6-year-old son, in which Hansel like takes a chicken bone and like puts it through his little cage. That way, the witch doesn't know that he has been gaining weight. She still thinks that he's skinny because he puts a chicken bone through the little, and she can't see well enough to realize that that's not his finger.
This seems like a lot to me. I'm wondering
I like where you're coming from. Yeah. Like the idea of the, like, I see where you're talking about. Where
I'm thinking like the whole thing seems like a setup, and I'm not sure why. I think someone could take a look at this story and punch it up for us. So if alternative stories and fake realities, like, I know you do a lot more things specifically with like mythology, but like, if you ever have a writer who wants to punch this story up a little bit, we've done your request. Talked about your excellent podcast. If you just want to do us a solid, I would love a retelling of this, or an audio drama of like a day as Shmi, behind the scenes, trying to make this happen. I think there's a lot to do.
So what perspective do you think that the Hansel and Gretel would need to be written from?
I'm thinking like
I'm you just think like a first person telling from.
I'm thinking there's some things going on, like there's some misunderstanding. I'm thinking there's some misunderstanding here in regards to the witch's purpose, because I think we're getting a second or third hand account of what's going on here. I think we should hear this from the witch's perspective. Like, maybe she...
How does the witch know all the background? Unless... See,
maybe the witch knows.
How does the witch know where they're coming from?
Yeah. Maybe the witch has been like spying in, or like maybe she's related to their father, and the father's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. She wants to get rid of the kids, and the witch is like, if anything happens to them in the woods, I'll get them. But then like when she does, like maybe something happens, or maybe like the stepmother switches places with the witch and disguises herself, like maybe it's the same woman. I don't know. There's a lot of things you could do with it.
I actually was just thinking about, like, maybe it's the same woman, because the weird thing to me is in the story, what happens is the wicked stepmother, which is, a wonderful trope.
A cool trope.
The wicked stepmother says, you should get rid of these kids because feeding them is expensive. So just go lose them in the woods. And he says, sure, that sounds like a great idea, and does that. And then, after they dispatch of the witch, they find their way back to their father and live happily ever after, with the stepmother apparently just being like, oh, well, I guess I won't try to lose you in the woods any more times, even though early in the story she tried at least twice.
Wait, so the stepmother's still there?
Well, theoretically,
they don't mention it.
Like, they don't say, like, Dad was like, I'm not gonna be with you anymore, wicked stepmother.
Oh, Dad, we found you. Thanks for murdering our stepmother while you were here. Like, while we were gone. Like, no one. I guess that would be a weird line in a children's book.
Murdering her seems a little harsh, even though they did literally murder the other woman in the story.
Yes, and when you have small children and leave them like far from civilization in the woods to starve. Like, murder by neglect is, I think, a thing you can do to children. And that is what she was attempting.
I believe you can. I think that... I don't know exactly what the terminology is, but I think that's, like, what they call it when you... like, if you leave a child in a car when it's hot.
She did that, but with a with a witch-infested forest. And I'm also against the evil witch trope. So, I just think it needs a retooling. I would really appreciate that. We are running...
Maybe a version of the story where it's just a nice woman who has a candy house and the kids just like turn on her out of nowhere.
Yeah, maybe these kids
push
are
her
rats.
Near the fire.
Maybe the stepmother's justified. She's like we need... Maybe she's like, take them into the woods, like take them out camping. They're asking for attention. Like take them out into the woods and like you need to talk to them. They won't talk to me. I'm not their mother. So he does, and he leaves them because he's like lazy or whatever, and he comes back, he's like, they're gone. Weird. And then eventually they go, and she's like, what is going on? This happens 3 times. And then the kids are little brats, and then they go to Candy House Woman and murder her.
And then push her into a fire because they're
they're
little brats.
Murdering brats.
Little murdering brats.
And then they return to the stepfather. And then they murder their stepmother, or the father, and they murder their stepmother, and the father's so afraid for his life, he's just like, yeah, we're happy now, like, just terrified.
Yeah, so alternative stories and fake realities. I got the name that time. There's a story for you. You should record that right up. Just we even got some dialogue for you.
Here's a cool line. Here's a cool line. I'll give you a read. You can just use this one. Yep. We murdered her up good, sister. That'd be like something Hansel could say. I don't know. You can try that one out, you know? See how that feels. Just let me know.
just try it out.
Wow, Hansel. That was a good murder. Thanks, sister. Just some more stuff to throw on. We have run pretty long. We should probably start wrapping this up. I know I didn't spend as much time talking about the story in particular, but it's a story. So, like, I recommend it, but I've given you some of the themes. I don't want to give away the story because that's the podcast. Yeah.
That's the point of the podcast. That's their jam. So you should go check it out.
Yeah. So let's throw this information into the algorithm.
Let's.
Alright, looks like we're getting our results right now. Awesome. Cool. I'm just going to look at this.
I love that classic printing sound.
I know.
I'm glad we got the old school printer.
Yeah, it really helps. And it prints so clearly on the green and white striped paper. Alright, so I'm looking at this. Alternative realities and fake stories is recommended for anyone interested in radio dramas or audio drama style things. It's great for writers, specifically writers who are interested in retellings of stories, as well as people who are just big fans of mythology as well. If you, like myself and my brother, want something with that flavor of Percy Jackson, but written for an adult who wants to think about things that are tough to think about, check this out.
Definitely. All right. Well, this particular episode of LRB readings, it says, is recommended for anyone who is just wants to be woke.
Woke up, people.
Who wants to be woke up. Anyone who just wants to learn about some of the problems with Greek mythology as far as feminism goes, and about how some of that stuff is still happening currently. And because a lot of times, as a straight white male, I'm not always recognizant of some of the problems that are happening because I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, you got to put the effort in. I mean, it's one of the things I've learned growing up. there's a lot of issues that I didn't just see because I didn't have to deal with them so much in my life. So,
So anyone who says like that they don't see where the problem is with feminine, like if they just because they don't have problems with being whistled at or have problems being afraid of walking at dark or even littler things than that. If you don't see that, we'll listen to someone who is much more articulate than I am tell you all about it.
Awesome. Thank you guys for stopping by. We want to do a few special thanks. Thanks to, again, both the podcasts. I'll start with mine. Thank you, Alternative Realities or Alternative Stories and Fake Realities, for one, reaching out to us, requesting the episode here. You can find them on iTunes or podcast app as Alternative Realities and Fake Stories. You can join their mailing list by dropping them a note at office@alternativestories.com. On Instagram, they're @stories.alt, and their website is alternativestories.com.
Very cool. Thanks to LRB Readings as well. They have a Twitter @LRB. Dame Professor Mary Beard has a Twitter as well, @WMaryBeard. Like I said, you can get access to LRB's entire archive for 24 hours by going to lrb.co.uk/open. Also, we have an email, and every single episode I want to tell people that we have an email, and I always forget. Our email is
therootofallpod@gmail.com.
That's the one.
I do want to say, and we'll put this in the description as well, that obviously we are made a little uncomfortable talking about topics like rape, and it's a difficult thing to address, but it's a significantly more difficult thing to deal with. So I do just want to say the National Sexual Assault Hotline, available 24 hours every day, is 1-800-656-4673. So if you or someone you know is dealing with anything regarding that, reach out. We'll put that number in the description of this episode as well.
Thanks once again to Mom for letting us use the computer for Skype calling.
Thanks to Ame for letting me use this awesome microphone.
Thanks, Dad, for help programming sounds into the algorithm.
Thanks for stopping by, you guys.
Thanks so much.
Love you, brother.
I missed the end of that.
I said love you, brother.
Love you, brother.